Καλησπέρα σας. Η Αναγόρευση θα ξεκινήσει με την προσφώνηση και παρουσίαση του έργου και της προσωπικότητας της τιμωμένης από τον πρίτανη του Εθνικού και Καποδιστριακού Πανεπιστημίου Αθηνών, καθηγητή Μελέτιο Αθανάσιο Δημόπουλο.
Κυρία Αντιπριτάνης, κύριε Κοσμήτορα, κύριε Πρόεδρε, κυρίες και κύριοι καθηγητές και καθηγήτριες, αγαπητές και αγαπητοί συνάδελφοι και φίλοι. Είναι ιδιαίτερη τιμή για μένα σήμερα να κάνω την προσφώνηση και να παρουσιάσω όσο μπορώ πιο συνοπτικά το έργο μιας πολύ σημαντικής ερευνήτριας και διοικητικής μορφής των Ηνωμένων Πολιτειών της Αμερικής, της κυρίας Lori Glimcher. Θα δώσουμε λίγο λεπτά στον Υπουργό, τον οποίο ευχαριστούμε πολύ για την σημερινή του παρουσία, εκπροσωπώντας τον Πρωθυπουργό κύριο Κυριάκο Μητσοτάκη, τον ευχαριστούμε πολύ για τη σημερινή του παρουσία. Θα μου επιτρέψετε ο χαιρετισμός και η παρουσίαση του έργου να γίνει στα αγγλικά, ούτως ώστε να μπορεί να μας παρακολουθήσει και η τιμωμένη. It is with great honor that we welcome here today in the historic Great Hall of our university an important personality who has contributed in many ways to science. The National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, by decision of the Senate and following also relevant decisions of the School of Medicine and the School of Health Sciences, awards its highest honor and declares Professor Lori Hollis Glimcher, Doctor Honoris Causa of the School of Medicine of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. Since 2016, Dr. Glimcher holds the position of President and Chief Executive Officer of the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston and the Director and Principal Investigator of the Dana-Farber Harvard Cancer in Boston, USA. Since 2016, Lori Glimcher has been appointed as the Richard and Susan Smith Professor of Medicine in the Harvard Medical School, and since 2017, Professor of Microbiology and Immunobiology in the same university. Professor Glimcher has also served for 4 years, 2012 to 2016, as the Stephen and Susan Weiss Dean of Weill Cornell Medical College in New York, where she was also Professor of Medicine. In addition, she was the Provost for Medical Affairs of Cornell University in New York, USA. Lori Holly Glimcher completed her undergraduate degree in biology, Bachelor of Arts in 1972 from the Radcliffe College of Cambridge in Massachusetts, USA, with magna cum laude, great distinction, and completed her MD in immunobiology from the Harvard Medical School in Boston in 1976, cum laude. She then completed her residency in medicine and immunology from 1976 to 1982, and she received her postdoctoral training at Harvard Medical School and in the Laboratory of Immunology at the Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in Bethesda. Professor Glimcher was first appointed as instructor in medicine in Harvard Medical School in 1982, and then as assistant professor in medicine in Harvard Medical School in 1983, and assistant professor of immunology in Harvard School of Public Health in 1984. Subsequently, she was appointed as associate professor of immunology in 1986 and medicine in 1987, and as professor of immunology in 1989 and of medicine in 1990 in the same Harvard schools. She is board certified in internal medicine and rheumatology and she was a senior rheumatologist at the Brigham and Women's Hospital of Harvard Medical School. She led the immunology program at Harvard Medical School and the Division of Biological Science program at the Harvard School of Public Health. Professor Glimcher has contributed significantly in the development of immunology and revealed its role in therapeutics. Her lab firstly isolated the first transcription factor, XBP1, which is required for controlling B lymphocyte differentiation to the antibody-producing plasma cells. Her group also discovered transcriptional regulatory proteins, including CMAF, NFAT, and NIP45 that led to the development of cytokine production by Thy2 helper cells. The naive CD4 T helper lymphocyte can differentiate along at least two distinct pathways termed Thy1 and Thy2, a choice that has far-reaching consequences for the outcome of the immune response against infectious microorganisms, cancer cells, allergen, and cell tissues. Her lab was also the first to characterize a TH subset-specific transcription factor with the identification of the Thy2 specific transcription factor, the pronto-oncogene CMAF, as the mediator of interleukin-4 expression, and subsequently isolated a novel coactivator protein, NYP45, which together with CMAF and NFAT family of transcription factors controls interleukin-4 gene expression. Professor Glimcher performed several basic research studies which had an application in subsequent management of several autoimmune diseases, including asthma, including ulcerative colitis. Also, she was involved with the study of skeletal biology as a special interest of her laboratory, arising from the discovery of a novel protein that controls adult bone formation. Large-scale screens have identified additional proteins, including members of the MAP kinase pathway that control osteoblast and osteoclast commitment and activation, and thus her lab contributes in understanding the pathophysiology of several bone disorders. Professor Glimcher's research work is described in more than 400 original publications in the most prestigious journals, including Nature, Science, Cell, Nature Immunology, Nature Medicine, Cancer Cell, and Annual Review in Immunology. These publications have been referred in more than 60,000 citations, and Professor Glimcher has an impressive H-index of 129 in ISI Web of Knowledge. She is the owner of more than 35 patents in the US, and she serves as a chair or member of more than 60 USA or international committees in immunology, medicine, public health, immunobiology and allergy, arthritis and musculoskeletal and skin diseases, AIDS research, rheumatology, and cancer immunology and prevention. She was the president of the American Association of Immunologists and counselor of the same association for 5 years, while she also served as the chair of rheumatology section and of the immunology section of the American Society of Clinical Investigation for 9 years. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, a member of the Institute of Medicine of the National Academy of Sciences, and a member of the National Academy of Sciences. She is also a member of the American Asthma Foundation, Immune Diseases Institute, Healthcare Ventures, Boros Wellcome Fund, and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center Scientific Advisory Boards, and serves on the Cancer Research Institute Fellowship Committee. Professor Glimcher serves as a member of the Corporate Board of Directors of the Bristol-Myers Squibb Pharmaceutical Corporation and Waters Corporation. She is the editor or member of editorial board of several respected journals, including Annual Review of Immunology, Journal of Clinical Investigation, Annals of Internal Medicine, and Journal of Immunology. Professor Glimcher has received several prestigious awards, including the Soma Weiss Award for Undergraduate Research, the Distinguished Young Investigator Award from the American College of Rheumatology, the Leukemia Society Stolt Memorial Scholar Award, the Arthritis Foundation Lee S. Howley Award, the FACEP Excellency Science Award, the American Society of Clinical Investigator Award, the Klemperer Award, the Senior Scholar Award, the Huang Meritorious Career Award, and the American College of Rheumatology Distinguished Investigator Award. Dear Professor Glimcher, the academic community of the oldest university of this country, the first Greek-speaking university in the world, the National Kapodistrian University of Athens, is very happy to welcome you. We extend to you warm wishes for health and for continuation of your work, which has already had a tremendous impact in medicine. Your presence and your appointment here today at the National Kapodistrian University of Athens, which this year completes 185 years of uninterrupted operation and contribution, is highly symbolic for us, honoring an important scientist, a physician, at the same time that the vast majority of our professors, young researchers, and students are in the amphitheaters and the laboratories and the clinics under difficult conditions. That is why your appointment today as Doctor Honoris Causa is also a message of hope and optimism for our students and young physicians and researchers that you can achieve your dreams if you work hard. Dear Professor Glimcher, we are welcoming you in our academic family, and we are looking forward to a fruitful collaboration. Thank you very much.
Αναγόρευση της τιμωμένης. Ανάγνωση των κειμένων του ψηφίσματος του Τμήματος, της Αναγόρευσης και του διδακτορικού διπλώματος από τον Πρόεδρο του Τμήματος Ιατρικής του Πανεπιστημίου Αθηνών, καθηγητή Γεράσιμο Σιάσο.
Εθνικό και Καποδιστριακό Πανεπιστήμιο Αθηνών. Ψήφισμα του Τμήματος Ιατρικής των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής. Τύχη αγαθή. Πριτανεύοντος εν το Αθήνησι Εθνικό και Καποδιστριακό Πανεπιστημίο Μελετίου Αθανασίου Δημοπούλου, κοσμητευούσης εν την των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής Χάιδος Σπηλιοπούλου και προεδρεύοντος εν το της Ιατρικής Τμήματι Πέτρου Σφικάκη, έδοξεν ομοφόνος το τμήματι. Λόρι Γκλίμψερ. Τα του Ασκληπιού έργα μέγιστα επισταμένην, την ιατρικήν επιστήμη έργοτε και συγκράμαση προαγαγούσα και την εαυτής φιλανθρωπίαν πολλαχή επιδειξάμενην. Προς δε τούτης εύνουν της έλυση διατελούσαν. Επενέσετε αυτήν και του Τμήματος Ιατρικής των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής διδάκτορα επίτιμον αναδείξε. Το δε ψήφισμα τόδε εις μεμβράναν αναγράψε και το του Τμήματος Πρόεδρον δημοσία εν τη αιθούση τη μεγάλη αναγνώντα και τα στιμάσαν υπόντα. Επιδούνε αυτοί, η ανημέρα η αναγόρευσης γέννητε, καθάν ενόμιστε. Εγένετο Αθήνηση, μηνός Δεκεμβρίου Τρίτη, έτος 9 και 10 και δυσχιλιοστού από Χριστού γεννήσεως. Ο του της Ιατρικής Τμήματος Πρόεδρος Πέτρος Φικάκης. Αναγόρευσης. Επιδίπερ το Τμήμα Ιατρικής των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής του Αθήνησι Εθνικού και Καποδιστριακού Πανεπιστημίου, Λόρι Γκλίμψε, άξιαν απέφυνε του επιτίμου διδακτορικού αξιώματος, Η δε της των επιστημών της υγείας σχολής του τα παιδέξατο και ο πρίτανης της σχολής γνώμη επινεύει, διατάφτα εγώ, Γεράσιμος Σιάσος, καθηγητής της καρδιολογίας, μοριακής καρδιολογίας, νυν δε του Τμήματος Ιατρικής πρόεδρος, χρώμενος στη δυνάμει, ειν παραν των πανεπιστημιακών νόμων και των τμήματος έχων λαβών, Lori Glimcher, επίτιμον διδάκτορα του Τμήματος Ιατρικής και των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής του Αθήνηση Εθνικού και Καποδιστριακού Πανεπιστημίου, δημοσία αναγορεύω, και πάσας αυτή τας προνομίας, τα το πανεπιστημιακό τούτο αξιώματι παραπομένας απονέμω. Εγένετο Αθήνηση, μηνός Μαΐου 7η και 20η, έτους Δευτέρου και 20ου και δυσχιλιοστού από Χριστού γεννήσεως. Ο του της Ιατρικής Τμήματος Πρόεδρος, Γεράσιμος Σιάσος. Ελληνική Δημοκρατία. Πριτανεύοντος εν το Αθήνηση Εθνικό και Καποδιστριακό Πανεπιστημίο, μελετείου Αθανασίου Δημοπούλου, καθηγητού της Θεραπευτικής Ογκολογίας Αιματολογίας, κοσμητεύοντος εν την των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής, Εμμανουήλ Πικουλή, καθηγητού της Γενικής Χειρουργικής, προεδρεύοντος εν το της Ιατρικής Τμήματι, Γερασίμου Σιάσου, καθηγητή της Καρδιολογίας Μοριακής Καρδιολογίας, Lori Glimcher, αποδόγματος ομοθήμου της των Επιστημών της Υγείας Σχολής εις τους επίτιμους διδάκτορας εγκρίνομεν. Μηνός Μαΐου 7η και 20η, έτος Δευτέρου και 20ου και δυσχιλιοστού από Χριστού γεννήσεως. Ο πρίτανης μελέτειος Αθανάσιος Δημόπουλος, ο κοσμήτορ Εμμανουήλ Πικουλής, ο του της Ιατρικής Τμήματος Πρόεδρος Γεράσιμος Σιάσος.
Περιένδυση της τιμωμένης καθηγήτριας με την τίβαινο της σχολής από τον κοσμήτορα της Σχολής Επιστημών Υγείας, καθηγητή Εμμανουήλ Πικουλή. Επίδοση τιμητικής πλακέτας από τον πρίτανη του Πανεπιστημίου Αθηνών, καθηγητή μελέτειο Αθανάσιο Δημόπουλο.
Ομιλία της τιμωμένης καθηγήτριας Lori Glimcher με τίτλο «Curing Cancer, the End of the Beginning».
I am so deeply moved beyond my power to describe my feelings to be given this honor in this place. For not only is Greece the birthplace of democracy, it is the cradle of Western civilization itself. And that civilization includes three things dear to my heart: education, science, and medicine. They began here in Greece, they flourished here for 2,000 years, and in this great university, they continue to thrive. In his brilliant speech to the United States Congress on May 18th, your Prime Minister, whom I had the pleasure and honor to meet with this afternoon, said these words, which really resonated with me. It was a Greek, and a Greek man at that, who first advocated equal rights for women in the Republic. Plato proposed that women should share all levels of power and take on all challenges, including military service. Any state that does not employ the talents of its women, Plato made clear, is wasting half of its resources. U.S. Congressman Jake Auchincloss said, "The Greek Prime Minister's address was the best speech I've heard as a member of Congress." And I'm sure the congressman was telling the truth because he happens to be my son. As I said, science and medicine began here, and I would like to celebrate that great tradition by telling you about science and medicine, where they stand today in our quest to conquer a disease that goes farther back in history than even the Greek civilization, and that is cancer. So just to set the stage, as you know, 2 out of 5 people will experience cancer in their lifetime. It is the most common cause of death in people 45 to 64 years old, and it will soon surpass cardiovascular disease in those over the age of 65. So 2 of every Americans will develop cancer. The proportion of the US population dying of cancer has not really changed since 1960, and that's probably likely due to lifespan, since the major cause and risk factor for cancer, of course, is growing older. And what about in Greece, cancer in Greece? 10 million people in Greece develop cancer. I'm just going to put this a little closer to me. 64,530 deaths from cancer in Greece. The distribution of cancers is similar to that of Europe and the United States, but there is less lung cancer in Greece and more breast cancer and bladder cancer. If we look at men and women, you can see there is a difference in the frequency of cancer. For men, it is colorectal cancer and lung cancer, and prostate cancer. For women, breast cancer. Now, we have made significant inroads into cancer. There are a number of cancers that we have done a lot for, whose treatment now is saving many, many lives. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, acute lymphocytic leukemia, bladder cancer, and kidney cancer. We have made inroads in those, but there are cancers that have remained intransigent. And when I say intransigent, it means that they are almost uniformly lethal. Pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, brain cancer, glioblastoma, and acute myelogenous leukemia. So what are we doing in cancer? I'm going to spend the few minutes that I have talking about the immune system and immunotherapy, but there are other revolutions that have occurred over the last 20 years, and one of them is genomics, cancer genomics, and the realization that cancers arise from a cell, from a normal cell that has a genetic mutation. And in many cases, we can develop a drug that disables that mutation and gives patients many years more of life. There is another emerging priority, and that is what's called Epi Genomics, and that is in its infancy, but is going to be extremely important. And then, of course, the best thing we can do is to detect cancer early, to prevent it before it has metastasized. And only 25% of our cancer patients at Dana-Farber come to us with stage 1 cancer. 75%, the cancer has already spread and is much harder to treat. So what about the immune system. It started with a surgeon in New York City named William Coley over a century ago, who noted that when he did surgery to remove cancer and the wounds became infected, sometimes the cancer disappeared. And Dr. Coley said, there must be some endogenous system in our bodies that when it fights off bacteria, also fights off and kills cancer. And he bottled up these bacterial lysates and sold them, but they were then replaced by chemotherapy and radiation. And a century went by before we could somehow let the immune system grow and become active in cancer. Because the immune system is very good at killing off viruses and bacteria. So why isn't it good in some cases in killing off cancer? The immune system usually ignores self-tissues. And when it forgets to do that, that leads to autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis. But they're meant to attack a cancer cell because cancer cells have unique proteins on their surface that are foreign and hence should be recognized by the immune system. But that does not always happen. Sometimes the immune system is exhausted, or the cancer cell is hidden. It's hidden. And that in that case, the immune system, which should attack a cancer cell, basically gets the message, don't attack me. I am you. I am self. I am not foreign. And that's when cancer develops, and that's what happens. So what are the components of the immune system that are critical to kill cancer cells? And I'm showing you here a picture of a cancer cell that is being killed by what we call the T lymphocyte, the brains of the immune system. And it is the T cell that ultimately kills cancer cells. So when you look at the survival rate in cancer, it correlates with how many T cells live in that tumor or near that tumor. The more T cells you have as you look at the tumor, the better the survival. There are two major sources of immunity. We call them adaptive immunity and innate immunity. They are both very important. The T cell is adaptive immunity, as is the B cell, and the innate immunity is other cells like macrophages or natural killer cells. What we were able to show, probably, I would say 20 years ago now, we were fortunate to identify the key regulator of what we call type 1 immunity. You have to have type 1 immunity to fight off cancer, to fight off viruses and bacteria. And that regulator, which we named TBET, is a transcription factor. And without TBET, you get impaired adaptive and innate immunity. So it is present in many immune cells. And we were able to show that if we got rid of TBET, that animals developed colorectal cancer. And most recently, in collaboration with another faculty member, we identified the first patient, the first human being who lacked TBET. And that individual is very susceptible to viruses, bacteria, and cancer. How did this all happen? What changed 2 decades ago that allowed us to make immunotherapy potent? 2 people deserve recognition for that. Dr. James Allison and Dr. Gordon Freeman from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. They understood that to activate the T cell, we had to turn off inhibitory receptors that exhaust that T cell. And they developed antibodies to 2 different inhibitory receptors and showed that treatment of patients with melanoma, end-stage melanoma, these individuals were on the cusp of dying, and many of them are alive 20 years later thanks to the what we call checkpoint blockers. And here's an example of a patient who got immunotherapy. He had lung cancer, and you can see that gray patch on the left-hand side. After immunotherapy, that individual had no more lung cancer and is still alive today, many years later. But we are far from being done with this, because only 10 or 12 different cancers are susceptible to immunotherapy, and even among those cancers, only 30 or 40% of patients respond. So we need to develop new immunotherapeutics. So what is cancer going to look like tomorrow? We talked about the checkpoint blockades. Those are the major immunotherapeutic drugs out and available. But there are other parts of the tumor and its surrounding environment that we need to harness. One of those is the tumor microenvironment. Another is adoptive T-cell therapies, so-called CAR T-cells, which have cured some people. Cancer vaccines, which we are working on at Dana-Farber, therapeutic cancer vaccines, which have already saved the lives of patients with melanoma. And of course, the best of all is early detection. Now, what about this immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment? If you think of the cancer as a castle, it is surrounded by a moat, and that moat is filled with immunosuppressive cells, all different kinds of immune cells that are turning off that important cell, the T cell, or preventing that T cell from coming in to see, that can't get across the moat to kill that castle. And there are many of these different immunosuppressive cells. Our contribution in this regard, again, involves another regulatory factor that we were fortunate to be able to discover, called IRE1 and its substrate XBP1. And we were able to show that in many cells, many immune cells, if you inhibit this particular protein, you do 2 things. You activate immunity, and you also simultaneously kill the tumor, because the tumor depends on this pathway to survive. So we have been engaged in identifying small molecule inhibitors of this pathway, because we expect that when we can find those small molecules, this should do 2 things together, so-called double whammy: activate the T cells and the innate immune cells and kill the tumor. CAR T cells, I think you've all heard of. This is a living drug, and I wanted to say just a few words about it. This is a rather intense manipulation. The patient's T cells are removed from the body, and they are genetically manipulated to target specifically the cancer cell proteins. They're expanded and they're infused back into the patient. About 10,000 patients have been treated by CAR T cells, but we have much more to do, because these are in many ways boutique. Most people can't afford CAR T cells. There are significant side effects from CAR T cells, but CAR T cells only work in hematologic malignancies. They do not work in solid tumors. So these are challenges. We need to make this an off-shelf, available to everybody, no matter where they are or what their economic background is. And there are many companies out there and people at academic medical centers like Dana-Farber who are working to do just that. And with that, I'm going to thank you for your attention and say that I think that Hippocrates, the father of medicine, actually foretold the importance of the immune system in cancer therapy when he said, the natural healing force within each of us is the greatest force in getting well. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you about this wonderful healing force within every one of us. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart for bestowing this honor on me. I think when in the future I look back on this event in my life, it will be the friends that I have made here that will warm my heart even more than the degree itself. Many thanks to Thanos Demopoulos, my husband, Greg Petsko, my brother-in-law, the Greek philosopher Alexander Nehamas, who is in the audience tonight with his son, Nicholas, who is a journalist. Alexander says that friendship is an anticipation of paradise. Your friendship will help me work even harder as we all anticipate the paradise that will come when cancer is cured. Thank you. Ευχαριστώ.
Πέρας της εκδηλώσεως, σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ για τη συμμετοχή σας.